Hey everyone, how you doing? It's Liam from Push Square, and I'm joined here by our editor, Sammy. Say hi, Sammy.
Hello, everyone.
So E3 was last week, Sammy, and we thought it would be a good idea to get together to have a little chat about whether or not we think, after the weekend that we've just bore witness to, whether or not E3 still has any relevancy in the modern era.
Yeah, indeed. This has been quite a hot debate of late, hasn't it? And I think from our perspective on Push Square, it's interesting how because it's a PlayStation only website, it feels like people can just dismiss your opinion on this so easily. Like you're just being a fanboy, you're just being salty. It's just because PlayStation wasn't there. I've seen a lot of that this week.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, so how do you think it went then? What did you think of the week as a whole?
So this is I feel like I'm the outlier in this conversation, and especially among a lot of people in the industry. So I didn't mind it. I have a lot of complaints about it, and I think I have a lot of reservations about the future of the show, but I think considering the year we've had, I think considering what's been going on, with COVID and things like that, I think a lot, not all of them, but a lot of the conferences had more to show than I expected.
Right. So you had seriously low expectations then?
I had no expectations.
Yeah,
and with
fair
Sony
enough.
not being there as well, I think our approach as a website was probably a little bit different to other people who were watching the show. I think we were quite aware that we wouldn't be seeing as much as maybe we would normally.
Yeah, I think my big thing about that is I've seen a lot of games media people on Twitter and stuff talking about, hey, it's the pandemic, what did you expect? And it's I totally get that. I totally appreciate and totally understand that the pandemic has disrupted everyone's plans. Everything's off schedule. I get that. But then you see Gearbox do a live stream. We won't call it a press conference, but they do a live stream. They've never done one before, and they decided this was the year to do one. And it's from a consumer perspective, I can fully appreciate why projects are behind schedule and stuff. I get that, but also, don't you have to have common sense as a company and know we're not ready to show stuff? This probably isn't the best year for us to do our first ever E3 live stream. Because the thing with Gearbox as well is they announced a new game at the Summer Game Fest. They've got the Tiny Tina Wonderlands thing, right? So they've got a new game coming out. It's coming out next year. And you tune into the Gearbox press conference thing and you're like, okay, they're going to show more of that, right? That's a reasonable expectation, I think. Yeah. They've announced a new game. They're having a live stream. They're going to show more of that. But they didn't. It was Randy Pitchford on a movie set. And it's well, this isn't... all right, this is my job, so technically I'm getting paid to do this. But as a consumer, if I'm a Gearbox fan or I'm a Borderlands fan and Gearbox is telling me to tune into their live stream, they're just wasting my time. What is this? I
absolutely do.
And I felt the same with Capcom as well. I totally get it. They're off schedule. They've just released Resident Evil Village. Great game. I enjoyed the game. They told us ahead of time what they were going to show. They said there'll be updates on Resident Evil Village. There'll be updates on the Ace Attorney thing and stuff like that. And you tune in, you're great, they're going to maybe show a trailer for some DLC or something like that, right? I feel like that was a reasonable expectation. And they have a black screen with white text that says, we've just entered production of DLC, and that is it on Resident Evil. And I feel again, why are you there? Why did you do this? I don't understand what... Because again, like I said, I understand and respect the situation, the pandemic, coronavirus, I get it. But you've got to have common sense as a company as well and realise, look, we've got nothing to show. Maybe we should just back out this year. We have nothing, we'll maybe do a trailer during Jeff Keighley's thing or something like that, but that's all we've got, Yeah,
I do.
And I just feel like it's not just this year that it's been like this. It's been a few years. It feels like companies show up when they know they haven't really got anything, and they don't need to be there. They don't need to do it. I don't understand. I really don't understand what they're doing.
I think, for me, this was my biggest issue with E3 this year, was the idea of companies wanting space but having nothing to fill it with. I mean, I watched an hour of the Koch Media show, and it really genuinely felt like I just had my COVID vaccine, and for the first 20 minutes, I was under the assumption that I was getting symptoms. I was having a reaction to the vaccine, because it felt like performance art. 20 minutes of Zoom calls. That was the first 20 minutes of that show. They had nothing to show whatsoever.
Do you know what the shocking thing about that is? Sorry to interrupt, but do you know what the shocking thing about that is? 2 weeks before, there was a media presentation with all the same stuff in it, and they actually showed stuff like videos, trailers, footage that they didn't show during the actual public live. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not uncommon during E3, right? Like, quite often, sometimes press who are part of the show will be privy to things that the public don't see for 6-12 months after the conference, right? But why do that presentation? And that's what I mean when I say, like, this was my issue. So many people just wanted to be on that list of publishers that were showing up, even though they had nothing to show. In all fairness to Capcom, I think they were quite honest about what they were showing. And, you know, I guess if you're a Monster Hunter fan with the Switch game, if you were excited for, you know, Great Ace Attorney, yeah, there was something there for you. But by that point, I think we were so desperate even for someone to turn up and show something. Because it was like a sunk cost fallacy by Sunday. We'd all put so many hours into watching these shows, and we were getting nothing from them. And if you're going to schedule an event for E3, people are going to assume that you have more to show than, like you mentioned, a black screen with some white text on that says, we are now in the early, you know, preliminary stages of DLC planning.
Yeah, I just don't understand what's going through some of the companies' minds. And I think another one that hammered the home for me, that this show is becoming slightly irrelevant to me anyway, is Square Enix. Now, Square Enix, to be fair, I've seen a lot of criticism of Square Enix, but I thought they did better than most of the other third-party publishers in that they actually showed new stuff, you know?
Yeah, they had stuff to show,
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy, you got trailer, you got gameplay, you know, all right, it may not have been the game you wanted to see, but at least they had something to show there. Yeah. But I think the thing for Square Enix, for me, was like, I knew going into the Square Enix show, they're not going to show Final Fantasy 16, they're not going to show Forspoken, because Sony has its marketing fingers all over these games, right? Sony wants to show them, but... So Square Enix has a press conference at E3, but can't show its best games. And that to me kind of hammered home the thing of, wait, E3 isn't even the best place for the biggest reveals anymore, because Sony's going to show these games when Sony wants to show them, and Square Enix has no control over that at all. And it was like, so Square Enix could have theoretically had Guardians of the Galaxy, Final Fantasy 16, Life is Strange, Forspoken, the other new Final Fantasy game as well, and the Babylon's Fall thing. They could have had all those games, and that's a really strong selection, I think. But the two games that people actually wanted to see, you're going to have to wait till Sony shows them. So it's like, okay, so why are you at E3 as well?
Yeah, well, because the whole weekend would have been ruined, Sammy, if we didn't have those... what's that game called? I know it's Stranger of Paradise.
Stranger of Paradise.
What
Final Fantasy
name.
Origin.
We wouldn't have had the Chaos memes if they weren't there, so I think in that sense, fair play to them. But I agree. So what I'm interested in hearing your opinion on then is, and you've alluded to this a little bit, why do you not feel like E3 is relevant anymore? Or losing relevancy, rather?
I think we did a debate or a discussion earlier in the year, and I said along the lines of, I think E3 is going to be really bad this year, or I may even said it might be cancelled. But anyway,
I think you did. I think you went hard on that prediction. Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't cancelled, but I still think we're going to get one next year, but I think you're going to see a lot of publishers drop out again next year. The thing for me is the two best shows, like, we're a PlayStation site, but let's be honest, the two best shows were easily Xbox and Nintendo. Like, there's not even a debate there. No. There was a huge gulf between them. But the thing for me is neither Microsoft or Nintendo needed E3 to do those shows at all. Now, I understand it's not a physical convention this year, which does change it slightly. But to announce all those games that Microsoft and Nintendo showed, they could have done them at any time of the year, whenever they wanted. They would have got the same audience and the same kind of metrics from it.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the E3 itself, like, it started as a trade show, right? This was a trade show for retailers and for the media to find out about what products companies had coming up. But over the years, it's transitioned into a kind of consumer show, right? It is more for consumers now. But from what I understand, and certainly like hearing interviews with Sony, particularly Sean Layden over the years, it's suiting neither audience particularly well. The consumers get in the way of the trade activity, and the trade activity is boring for consumers, right? So there's no real target audience for the show. It's not like a PAX or an EGX, which is clear this is a consumer show. We know what we're doing here. And I also think that now these companies have massive audiences of their own. Nintendo can get 1 million people to watch a live stream any time of the year, any time of the day. It will get those views, it will get those eyeballs. And it's the same with Sony. I mean, Horizon Forbidden West got a new gameplay demo a few weeks ago, right, just before E3, and that has higher engagement than practically everything announced at E3. So that, I feel like that tells its own story. You'll see massive engagement when Sony does do a show at some point later in the year, and I feel like we just don't need this. I don't understand why companies insist on doing this summer week-long. It's an advert, let's be honest, it's an advert.
Absolutely, yeah.
Why do we need a week-long advert at the start of June when these companies can just do it whenever they want to? And more to the point, like, if I'm Capcom and I've got this why don't I just wait until I've got a trailer of the Resident Evil Village DLC to show? Maybe it's October, maybe it's November, maybe it's next year, whenever it is. When you've got something to show, tell your fans to show up and show them something meaningful, instead of just hitting this arbitrary date of we've got to be at E3 because we've always been at E3, you know?
Would you prefer it as a consumer, but also B, as a member of the games media, if these presentations were split out across the entire year rather than situated within that first week of June?
Yeah, definitely. I think from our perspective, like, purely as writing about games, it allows you to dig deeper into everything, because during E3 you've got no time to even think. You're just putting up trailers basically, so nothing really gets the attention it truly deserves. And I also think, like, as a consumer, yeah, I mean, we get announcements all year long anyway, so there's no real change there, but I think it's more fun if you've always got something coming up rather than everything being concentrated into June. I just don't really see the point in everyone fighting over the same sort of column inches and the same airtime. It just doesn't make sense to me. And plus, like I've just said, like, companies, if they actually wait until they've got something meaningful to show, they can actually show something meaningful, which you know, is a crazy idea, but why not? You know?
I think in that year really exasperated that particular aspect of people having nothing to show.
But I feel like it's been on the decline for quite a long time. And it's not just because Sony pulled out. I feel like the third-party publishers' shows have been getting slimmer and weaker every year for many years now. I can't remember the last truly memorable third-party live stream. I mean, even with Sony, I know they've been out of it for a few years, but you're going back to the one where they did the God of War reveal was the really last good one that they did.
Was that 2016?
Yeah, so that's like 5 years. That's I know we had a year off, and so that doesn't count, but that's a long time.
Still half a decade ago.
Yeah, it's a long time, right? And I don't think, I know Microsoft had a good one this year. I don't think they've had a good one for a long time till this year either. And even Nintendo, the directs have been mixed. But at least with Nintendo, you know, when they show up to do one of these directs, they've actually got something. All right, it's not always to everyone's taste, but they only do a direct when they have something new to say or something new to announce, right?
Yeah.
And that can be at any time of the year. I just don't think it needs to be this first week of June. But I do think that I should say that after years of doing 2 a.m. Sony press conferences, it does knock it does knock it out of you a little bit. I will admit to that. Like I didn't. It got to a point where I didn't enjoy doing that anymore because you're sitting down to watch it at 2 a.m. You're not starting to write till 4 a.m. and you've done like 3 press conferences before that. All right, this is not the hardest job in the world. I'm not pretending I'm doing brain surgery, but it does knock out your interest a little bit.
Yes,
it does knock out your interest a little bit. So that is a factor. But I still think if Sony was involved in E3, I still feel I'd have the same opinion. I really do.
As a consumer, like purely from my consumer brain, I do think something is lost when E3 starts to wane a little bit. And I agree. I think the third-party publisher issue really is because all of them split off. If we look back 8 years ago, majority of Bethesda things, Square Enix things, they would all have been announced within the Xbox and the PlayStation conferences. They would not have had their own presses. But I do think the more segregated it gets, the more that it's all split apart into these tiny little pockets, you do lose something. You lose those, those 3 big shows, the 3 big platform holders who would come out, who would do 90-minute conferences where they would show you lots of different things, and there was an excitement about that. There was a buzz about that. I think it outlined what the industry would look like for the next 12 months, which I always liked. I always liked how with everything so concentrated in one place, it would give you a very good idea of where we were as an industry and as a consumer, the type of things you'd expect. And I always used to really appreciate that. And like you say, we always get news throughout the year, even before all of these different platform holders and publishers have started to run their own direct style online presentations. But there's something about E3 that always felt exciting. It felt like a celebration. It felt like a festival. But I still enjoyed sitting down this weekend. I still enjoyed tuning in and watching all of them because there was still a lot of games, and admittedly they were mainly indie stuff, and my interests quite often do skew more towards the indie side anyway, so I think I was quite well fed this weekend because there was a lot of individual indie shows.
Sure.
But there was something about the process, the ritual of sitting down for a few days, of putting on the shows, of enjoying the presenters and seeing new things. There was still something about that spectacle that I really appreciate, and that I would miss. I think I would genuinely miss if E3 just disappeared completely.
Personally, I didn't enjoy watching the presentations this week. I'm glad you did.
Oh, yeah, but Sammy, I think I'm the only person.
No, you're not the only person. For me, it was like the Euros, the football tournaments on the TV. It's like I would much rather have been watching that. I felt like I'd been conned into doing this other stuff, and now again, it's my job. I get paid to do it, but at the same time, like I just didn't want to be doing it. But yeah, so what do you think about next year then? You think E3 is coming back next year? How do you think it's going to look?
Oh, that's a good question, because I think E3 as an organisation needs a lot of work. They lost all of the media personal details in 2019. I think the organisation itself needs to adapt. For me, I always envisaged, in the modern era, that E3, if it's going to be a consumer show, let the consumers be more involved, have some kind of demo portal, work with your publishers to let people at home play stage floor demos at the same time as press or any kind of industry members. I think they also need to try and give more, because one of the things I missed this year was the stories that come out of E3 from publications, interviews that you would normally get from people who were there. We didn't get any of that this year. All any really publication could do this year was churn out the same information that was shown in the live streams, right?
Yeah.
But I think if it comes back, and I do want it to come back, I would like to see it be a little bit more consolidated. I'd probably like to see less individual publisher shows, because I think you're just setting yourself up for disappointment there. And no publisher wants that. No one wants that level of scrutiny from their fan base. There was a couple of shows this weekend, they finished, and I did think to myself, God, I could have done anything with my life. That's 45 minutes of my life I'm never going to get back. It's not a great feeling.
No.
But you consolidate it. I think what it needs is one more go. I think that's all it needs. If we get another year and it feels the same as this, hopefully by June 2022, COVID more manageable and people are able to live their lives a little bit more, if things are a bit more back to normal and it still feels flat, it still feels disappointing, Sony still aren't there, which I don't think they ever will be, but if they're not even adjacent with their own show, yeah, it's probably time to call it quits, right?
Yeah, I think they will give it another go. I definitely think they will. Time's going to tell whether they'll be able to do a physical one. Maybe next year they'll be able to. But I think, what I think's going to happen is either Microsoft or Nintendo's going to pull out next. They'll do what Sony's done, and I think that'll be the end then. So
Agreed.
you'll have a show without either Microsoft or Nintendo. I'm not sure which one it'll be, and I think once they go as well as Sony, then it's just over then. So that's what I can see happening in 2022. But yeah, I think without either of those, that there's just no point anymore.
No, I think I agree with that as well. So the big question really for us as a PlayStation outlet is, when do we think Sony are going to schedule in something?
You know what? Sony is so unpredictable. I just don't have a clue. Everything, the only real clue we have is when they showed the Death Stranding thing during the Jeff Keighley live stream. He said you'll see more in a couple of weeks or something like that, right?
That's a good point. I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, so I think it's either going to be end of June, early July. They've got to do something because, they've got, if nothing else, like we said earlier, they've got the Square Enix games and stuff that they'll be sort of mandated in their contractual agreement to show at some point. So they've got to do something. It's just when. I don't know. I think we will see it within the next couple of months, but that's a very vague sort of time frame, isn't it?
I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to say it's going to be August 19th.
August 19th. You've even put in a date. At what time? I'll set my calendar.
A solid 7:30 p.m.
Yeah, they've got much better at the European times as well, haven't they, lately?
Oh, they have.
It's no more 2 a.m.
Godsend last year, wasn't it, with the PS5 presentations?
I mean, it'll be interesting because, PlayStation 5's obviously had an amazing year. They've had lots of games, but I always feel like they're under pressure. They've got to do something. And it's maybe not fair because they've had a great start to the generation and they've released lots of good games, but it always feels like we need more. So it'll be interesting to see what else they've got beyond Horizon, because I know God of War's coming out, but we don't really know what else is in the pipeline beyond that. Presumably lots of stuff, but
25 things, I think, in that Herman Hulst interview.
That's right. Yeah,
so they definitely have a lot cooking. They're just not ready to show it. Like you said before, better to not, right? Better to keep it under wraps until they have something better to show.
I think they've switched into a kind of schedule where they announce things a lot later now. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Last of Us multiplayer thing was coming this year. But we haven't seen anything or heard anything about that. But I wouldn't surprise me if they're like, right, this is it. It's coming out in 3 months. You can sign up for the beta now, kind of thing. That wouldn't shock me at all. Yeah, hopefully a good show coming from Sony at some point anyway.
Yeah, I hope so. And obviously everyone watching, make sure that you're checking the website, check the YouTube channel. We'll be the first to tell you about that and cover it. Any final thoughts, Sammy, before we call this a day?
E3 sucks.
Oh, poor E3, this $1 billion marketing event that's a bunch of adverts. How dare you speak ill of it?
Honestly, we put the live streams on the site as articles for people to watch, and towards the end, when I was putting in the last few, I just was writing them apologetically. I almost wanted to tell people, don't waste your time. Like, you can watch it if you want, but you probably shouldn't.
As I was watching the Koch Media one, I clicked onto our live stream page and it was a ghost town. There was no one there for the first hour.
I didn't even watch it.
No, and whatever I mentioned in Slack, didn't I? I was like, oh, has anyone watched this? And you and Stephen were like, No, did you? Yeah, foolishly I did. Oh, well, brilliant. Well, thank you for jumping back on the channel, Sammy. It's always such a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we will see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving it a like and make sure to stay subscribed, or indeed subscribe to Push Square for everything PlayStation. We'll see you next time.